Hi everyone, welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. Core Recruitment is an international recruitment company and we look at mid to senior level recruitment across non and exec positions. We're running this interview series to inject some positivity into the markets that we operate across, and we're very fortunate to be speaking to some great business leaders. I am currently sitting in an airport, so I'm speaking in slightly hushed tones when I would normally be speaking, in case you're wondering why I'm muffled. But we're obviously recording lots of these interviews at the moment as well. All of them can be seen on our website, which is www.corerecruitment.com. Some are articles, some are videos, so please feel free to look at the content, share it with others, and if there's anybody that you would like to recommend, or perhaps even yourself, who's got an interesting story to share, then please do get in touch with us. We're going to be running this series all through the year. Now, we're extremely lucky to be joined by Champa from Access Group, who's going to be telling us a little bit about herself, her career journey, Access, and her expectations for the year ahead. How are you, Champa?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you, Krishnan?
I'm very, very good indeed. Thank you very much for joining us today. In case those who might not be 100% familiar with Access Hospitality, can you tell us a little bit about the wider group and also hospitality arm of the business?
Sure, absolutely. So, the Access Group, which is what Access Hospitality is part of, is a B2B private equity owned software company, HQ'd out of the UK, but we're a global company. We've been operating for, I want to say, 25 years. We operate across multiple markets, but UK is our home market. UK is where we have our biggest footprint. We have multiple divisions within the group, of which Access Hospitality is one of the largest divisions in the company. We exclusively focus on all aspects of hospitality, so software for all aspects of hospitality, I should say. So we support food and beverage hospitality operators, and that could be restaurants, bars, but it could also be food and beverage service in other types of businesses as well. So, for example, in the US, we support convenience stores who have a food and beverage operation. We support transport hubs where there's food and beverage service. We support colleges where they have food and beverage service. So anywhere where there's food and beverage service, we have software that supports those food and beverage operators. But we're also very unique as a software company in that we support another end market within hospitality, which is the accommodation space. So that could be hotels, it could be vacation rentals. We support those operators as well, both in terms of their food and beverage tech needs, but also in terms of whatever they need to be able to maintain their inventory of rooms, sell rooms, distribute rooms globally, offer direct booking capability for hotel operators, etc. So that makes us very unique in that, I say we're of hospitality, by hospitality, and for hospitality. So we're not just a generic software company.
Love that. Now, your company has been very acquisitive over the past couple of years. I think every single time I go to a networking event, I hear about another thread that you've kind of taken on. Can you tell us a little bit about the strategy there and what you're planning to do with the business moving forward?
Yeah, so Access Hospitality, we operate globally. We operate across all major regions in the world. We have a footprint in the US. We have a footprint, obviously, UK and Ireland. We also have a footprint in continental Europe across Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and we have a footprint in Asia Pacific. So we are truly global. And that presence has come in two ways, really. One is, as any normal business, we've expanded organically. So we develop new products, we take new products to new markets, we sell them to customers, we develop a presence there. But as you rightly pointed out, something that I think is very notable about what we also do is we scan the market for great products and offerings that hospitality operators see a good fit in, and we invest in those businesses and acquire those businesses. But we don't just acquire those businesses and operate them as independent businesses. We actually integrate them into the division. We integrate those products. We look to see what we can do with our existing products and these new products that we've acquired that we can bring to market. And so it's very much a part of how we grow our business. And yes, we've been, you know, very fortunate to have identified businesses that offer really great products in the hospitality space globally that we've now brought into the Access Hospitality fold, and we're offering across multiple markets to our customers. And that will continue to be our strategy. So, our strategy for this calendar year, one, in terms of our organic business, we are over the back end of last year, we actually enhanced and upgraded all our products into what we call the Access Evo platform. The Access Evo platform introduces some exciting capabilities into our products. It introduces a single sign-on capability across all our Access Hospitality products, which means our customers who have multiple Access Hospitality products, have one single sign-on, consistent look and feel, mobile, ability to access the product through mobile. All of these, which wasn't consistently available across our product portfolio, is now consistently available across our product portfolio. What it also we made available was that customers are now starting to access AI capabilities across all our products. But this year, the plan is actually to start to bring what we call suites into being. So not only can you use a single sign-on to be able to access our products, but now the data across our products is on a common data platform. We're able to bring analytics across products in one place for our customers to be able to access. We're then able to have AI capabilities across that data and effectively bring interoperability, because I know the number one friction that hospitality operators face with software is that it's very fragmented. So a big objective we have is how do we make it more seamless so that hospitality operators can gain from productivity and efficiency benefits in the software that they use. So that's a very big objective we have for the year. But the second objective, which has always been an objective for the business, is we will continue scanning the environment and acquiring great products and bringing them in. But the difference this year is, as we do acquire great products and bring them in, we will be then integrating them into our Access Evo platform and integrating them into the suites offering that we'll be making available.
Excellent. I definitely want to ask you a question about AI coming up, but I will save that for afterwards. Now, integrating together all of these founder-led businesses sounds like it might have a couple of challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about how you approach this?
Yeah. So, we acquire founder-led businesses, but we acquire businesses of all sizes. If you look at some of the acquisitions we've made, they've been a mixture of founder-led, smaller size businesses, but also mid-size, professionally managed businesses where you have a CEO and a management team, and also fairly large businesses. I mean, the last acquisition we made in the US, Paytronics, it's a fairly large company with a great footprint. This is what has really helped us build the portfolio that we have, both in terms of products, which is truly end-to-end for hospitality operators, but also the size and scale we have now developed, which is about 120,000 venues globally. Integrating any business, any acquisition is a challenge, right? I mean, I've had the benefit of doing this across my career, not end to end, I'll admit. Access is the first place I've been able to do it end to end, source an acquisition, make an acquisition, integrate it, and then have the pleasure of running the business. But in other businesses I've been in, I've sort of been involved in parts of it, and integration is always a challenge, regardless of the size, the scale, or the type of company that we bring in. However, at Access, we do not acquire failing businesses. We acquire successful businesses. And a big part of success, of course, is the financial success of that business, but also, are they great products? Do they have customers who love that product? And also, something we are very keen on is the quality of the talent bench, whether that is the founders, whether that is the management team, whether there's the teams that service and support customers. We're very keen in bringing on board, people who are passionate about hospitality and hospitality tech, who have ideas and a vision for transforming what we offer hospitality operators. Because when we acquire a business, we're not just acquiring the P&L or the products, we're acquiring talent. It's our greatest source of talent. which is why I don't have to recruit as much externally because I'm constantly acquiring businesses and bringing talent on board. I mean, if I look at the last 2 years, and I look at my profile of people that I have in across Access Hospitality, I would say about 60% of our people have joined the group in the last 2 years, have joined Access Hospitality in the last 2 years. They've come in through acquisitions, right? So I have a great deal of respect for the talent that we bring on board, and we put in a lot of thinking around how do we help that talent develop. Many of my senior leadership team have actually come in through acquisitions, have stepped up and taken broader responsibility in the division, and are helping contribute to the wider strategy of the division. So I think for me, there's some of the golden rules of making an integration successful. It's always hard, don't get me wrong, but making an integration successful is getting to know the founders, getting to know the management teams, and helping them find space in the business. It's not always possible, but doing our best to help them find space in the business or helping them achieve the goals that they want to for the business when they join Access Hospitality. Second thing is really we don't acquire failing businesses. We acquire succeeding businesses. So understanding the magic in those businesses, what is it that made those businesses successful? It's more than just what we do in a due diligence process or what we understand of the business from a financial perspective. It's really understanding what has made this business successful. What is that heartbeat? What's that secret formula, the recipe, the ingredients for success? And the third thing is when we do integrate them, of course, there's a lot of things that Access does that is very successful. We have playbooks, but when we do implement those playbooks, trying to ensure that we do no harm to that which has made the business that we acquired successful. That's not always easy to do. We don't always get that balance right, but those are the three almost sort of north stars that we keep in mind when we integrate a business.
Was a very good answer. Thank you very much for that, Champa. Now, in terms of your background, your experience is very much global. You've worked for some amazing businesses and had some amazing roles across the US, Middle East, Singapore, Europe. For those who are watching this and would really like to develop their own careers globally and have those types of experience, what kind of what advice would you give?
Well, I think the number one advice is to be open to opportunities and to be willing to take risks. Um, because when you think about international opportunities, an opportunity arises in another market. It's never it's never initially going to sound hugely exciting because even though the career might be exciting, well, oh, what is it going to what is it going to feel like to live in another market? I don't know anything about that market, so am I going to be successful? There's going to be a lot of risks that will present itself in that decision to take advantage of that opportunity. And it is too easy to focus on the risks and to lose sight of the opportunity because the opportunity is untested. The opportunity is it could be anything you choose to make it, right? It cannot be anything beyond that. And so I've always found that it's really important to be open to opportunities and to be willing to take risks. Without that, I don't think any of the moves that I made in any of those geographies would have been possible. And, were they all the opportunities that I thought they would be, I would be lying because that's not how life works, right? But you find yourself in a situation and you extract value out of it because you appreciate the opportunity. I think that that's super important. The second thing is I think anyone who's starting out in their career, I always say this to them that yes, there's outcomes that you want from your career, and it all depends on personal values and ambitions that you have. And you may think of it that in terms of positions. You may think of that in terms of financial outcomes. You may think of that in terms of a life you want to build. All of those are outcomes. But really, what a career is about is it's a learning journey. And if you do not enjoy the learning, it's impossible to grow your career. And that for me has stayed a constant, regardless of the role or the geography or the type of job I have done, and continues to be my single biggest motivator in the job that I have today in Access Hospitality. Because if I don't wake up every morning, looking forward to learning something new, and if I don't end every evening embracing, wow, I was in that situation, I had no clue what to do, but isn't it amazing that I learned something? Then I don't think I could do the job I do. So I think that would be the advice in building a career, internationally or otherwise. It's really being open to opportunities, being willing to take risks, and recognizing that it's about learning.
Excellent. Now, through that kind of journey, obviously, I'm sure there were some twists and turns, and I'm a big believer in kind of like coaching, mentorship, that kind of side of things. Were there any inspirational leaders or kind of like characters kind of like along the way, either internally or externally, who you found were supportive or gave you any great advice that you'd like to share with others?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've always found people who like pick one or two leaders, and I've been quite admiring of that because, frankly, I don't know if I've just been very fortunate, but, you know, pretty much in every point in my career, I have either it's leaders or it's been peers that I've worked with who have all offered great advice or have served as inspiration or served as, a temporary mentor, because I had a challenge I was dealing with and they had a great perspective on how they looked at it. So I'm a great believer that the other aspect of a career that I think is very underweighted is the opportunity it creates to meet great people, because that's what's really served me well. So, pretty much in every job that I've done, the leaders I have worked for, regardless of whether their style worked for me, right? Like we tend to think, oh, so and so was a bad boss or so and so was a good boss because they promoted me or they didn't, or we disagreed or the leadership style didn't work. But even a leader whose leadership style didn't work for me has taught me something. I have still picked up a lot from those leaders in terms of things that they do well, because it's not like somebody does something badly consistently, right? Like there's some things that they do well that I have been inspired by, and there are some things that perhaps doesn't work for me just in terms of their style. So it's hard for me to pick one leader just because I have learned and been inspired and been fortunate enough to be mentored and informally coached by peers and even people who have worked for me, who have given me feedback, which has served as a teaching moment for me. So, almost like reverse mentoring. I have benefited from all of that along the way. And so, for me, I would say the greatest gift of what I do, and which is why I love working and supporting the hospitality industry, is because it's about the people that you work with, whether they are your bosses, your peers, or those who work for you or with you.
Excellent. And how do you think like, I mean, now that you're a NED and you sit within kind of like, multiple companies and organizations, if you could tell us a little bit about some of the NED positions that you have, and I guess kind of like, what you get out of those and kind of like what you feel like you kind of deliver to those companies as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm a non-exec director in a FTSE 250 company. I only have one NED position because I just don't have enough hours in the day to do justice between my executive job and the NED position I have. I thoroughly enjoy my NED position because I think the way I think about it is when you're an executive, you're so used to sort of running things and diving into things and making decisions and making things happen, and you kind of get into that mode. Being an ed is very different. The clue is in the name, non-executive. So, how do you be a non-executive when you've trained your entire life to be an executive? So that's quite a good intellectual puzzle. It stretches me in ways that I hadn't anticipated. What the NED position helps me to do, one, I learned from my colleagues. I'm very fortunate to work on a board where I feel like I have the best colleagues on the board, both the executive directors as well as the non-executive directors and the chair that I work with. I learned from them. But also, the NED position has trained me that you can influence by asking great questions, because that's how you influence as a Ned, right? Like you absorb a lot of information, you listen a lot, you actively listen, and you decide when to make an intervention. And that intervention generally is a question, a well thought out question in the right context. And that is a skill that you don't necessarily have to exercise a lot as an executive, but probably should exercise. I should be exercising more as an executive. And so I think it definitely has helped me in that. And I've gained from that. But the other thing as well is I feel like it airs out my agenda a bit. So, as an executive, I'm go, go, go. How do we execute? And then I go and be a non-executive for a day and a half, and I'm learning to step back and think. And that actually helps my executive job as well, because, thinking doesn't have boundaries, right? Like you don't just think. And there are things when I'm thinking about, the company that I'm on the board of, there are common business problems, common business challenges that I go, well, oh, wow. Now I've been thinking about this. Actually, I could apply that in my executive role as well. So it gives me the space and allows me the strategic bandwidth to exercise that muscle, which I probably don't have a lot of time to do in the executive role. So I highly recommend people who perhaps, executives who are considering, oh, do I take on a Ned position? What could I get out of it? I highly recommend it because it certainly has, I think, made me a better executive. But I think more importantly, I've learned so much from it, and it has been such an enriching experience. If you can make the time, I would say, at least to take on one additional Ned position.
That's really good. That perspective sounds really valuable. Now, not every day is a sunny day in business, especially working within the hospitality sector. And this is a positive, upbeat session that we're trying to put together. I mean, there are kind of like lots of challenges out there at the moment. I think failure is a word that, especially in the UK, we associate really badly with, and we take really personally. I don't know if in other cultures and countries and all of that kind of stuff it's quite viewed in the same way. But if you could share a little bit about what you kind of feel like one of your failures has been, and maybe what you learned from it, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's been many. I think a great career, I think a great career, the success is the outcome, failure is the fuel. So I don't think you can build a great career unless you've had, the benefit of failing along the way. I don't think failure is terminal unless you choose to see failure as terminal, right? Because I think it's all in mindset. So I'm a great believer. I think the first thing, I absolutely agree with you. The connotation of failure is quite cultural, but also can be quite personal. I have a very different view on failure. So I take the sort of view that risk and opportunity are two sides of the same coin. It's impossible to have opportunity without risk, and it's impossible to have risk without opportunity. So in fact, when you are staring failure in the face, it's like, well, there has to be opportunity in this. I'm just not seeing it, right? Because of the emotion of failure taking over. And so and it's the same thing. If I'm very wary of success actually, because I'm like, okay, where's the risk in this? Because the two are intertwined, right? And that's why business exists. Business exists because the greater the risk, the greater the opportunity. The smaller the risk, the smaller the opportunity. That's how P&Ls work. You can't make a profit without risk. So I think it's just it's like a laws of physics, right? It's a fundamental law of business. And so I take that approach when I look at things. I have pretty much in every job, when I started off in sales, there are deals I didn't win. I remember this is a very, very long time ago. I was in payments and I had literally just joined the company. We were bidding for a very big piece of business. It was a retail store. This was super important. Two levels above were sort of um, involved because of how important this business was. I was relatively new to the company. I was 6 months in. Um, and we went to the bid, and as luck would have it, um, the day that we were bidding, there was a change of ownership for our company announced publicly, right? So I had no control over when we were going to announce it. We announced it on that day. So obviously we turn up and we're pitching, and the board at the other end went, whoa, you're a company that is going through transition. There's a change of ownership. So we're going to move away from you. Um, it was I took it very personally because it was a huge impact on my portfolio, on my targets. There was no way, given the size of business that was walking out the door, there was no way that I was going to be able to make my numbers that year. And I had just started in this company, right? So I had every reason to believe that this was terminal failure. Let me start applying for another job because I'm going to get kicked out, right? But I kind of took the view, look, I mean, there's an opportunity here, right? And the opportunity is this was uncontrollable. It wasn't something I did, right? It wasn't something I could have handled, but I have something to fix. I have to fix the numbers gap, but you know, there is a, this means that I can actually show myself to be an achiever, right? Like this is my opportunity. I'm not going to be a run of the mill person who hits a target. I'm somebody who's going to overcome this adversity and demonstrate that I will still hit my target. And I did at the end of the year because it was that mindset, right? Because that is important. If I'd given up at that point, I'm not going to hit the target. The maths doesn't add up. The facts are against me, which no one could have blamed me for. I wouldn't have got it. It's a surefire way of never making target, right? It was because I refused to accept the facts and said, yes, I get it, but actually this was uncontrollable failure. And they didn't choose to leave because I did a bad job. They chose to leave something much more strategic, but I can still make my target. I have a large portfolio. There's bound to be opportunity. I still have time. How am I going to make that happen? That was what then allowed me to build a plan, to seek opportunities, to push on other parts of the business that helped me uncover and convert opportunities that meant that I got to target. So it was that failure that sowed the seed for a success that then was seen as, oh, wow, I mean, this is amazing success because, it was built on the back of adversity.
It gave
Uh,
you that rocket fuel, right?
exactly. And I think that people don't appreciate that failure is a choice. Not, in terms of the disappointment. The disappointment wasn't a choice. The disappointment happened to me, but choosing to see it as a terminal failure is a choice. One that I can choose to take or choose not to accept. And I found pretty much every time consistently that mindset has helped me out.
Nice. Wait, on that kind of topic of mindset, I mean, we hear a lot, and I hear a lot in recruitment about the people who are kind of like coming through now in terms of Generation X, Generation Y, all of that kind of side of things in terms of like their mindset, their resilience level. Like, what mindset or what advice would you give to kind of people that are starting out in their careers at the moment? Because it's a very different market to what it was 20, 25 years ago, right?
Yeah. Um, Look, I think it's really important to be grounded in your values and to be very clear about what your values are. Because as you make decisions along the way from a career, but there's no right or wrong answer. I don't think there is this is what a successful career looks like, because what is success is intensely personal. And it is, what is it you're trying to achieve, and how is that linked to your values and therefore your hierarchy of priorities, right? So being clear on what those are and recognizing that those are likely to change over the course of your life. I think that's also very important. So reassessing what are your priorities. I'm very disciplined in every December, I update my CV, not because I'm looking for a job every December, but it's very helpful, that process of updating your CV to, sort of crystallize for myself, what have I achieved? What didn't I achieve? What did I think I was going to achieve in the beginning of the year? What didn't I achieve? And then what is my priority in life right now? right? And that thinking helps because then you get into the next calendar year being very clear about what is it that I want to achieve in the year out of my career. So I think that's super important because out of that then stems all the conversation of work life balance, which I don't agree with. I think work is part of life just as much as life is, other parts of life are part of life. So it's all life, right? So how do you want to divide up and apportion time, and what do you want to get out of those various parts of your life? Is that's that prioritization, I think. So that's number one, is very important. The other attributes I think are definitely tenacity and resilience. The two go hand in hand. You cannot be tenacious if you're not resilient, and the whole point of being resilient is to be tenacious. So I think that's another very key attribute, regardless of what you're trying to achieve, because what you don't control is the disappointments, the inevitable disappointments that will find you. And I love reading. And recently I've been reading poetry by Rumi, who's a Persian philosopher, and I love philosophy. And one of the poems he's written, he talks about finding joy in sudden disappointment. And that really resonated with me because it's exactly as I said, how do you find opportunity in adversity? And if you develop that mindset, then you're going to be resilient because you're not going to get dragged down by whatever may happen to you. So resilience and tenacity, I think, is really important. And the third thing that I think is very important, because I have had the opportunity to work in multiple industries, in multiple geographies, but regardless of industry, geography, function, a business and a career is a people business. And so having empathy is super important. Having an empathy quotient is super important. Finding joy in interacting with people is super important because unless you do that, you're not going to learn from people. You're not going to be, all the gifts that are being presented to you in a day where, somebody you work with is giving you saying something that could potentially inspire you or teaching you something, you miss it because you're not listening, you're not empathetic, you're not interested. And that is the greatest joy in any career, meeting different people and learning from them. When I say I've worked in all these different countries, yes, it's been great. I've worked in all these different countries, but it boils down to moments with people who have a diverse cultural background that has enriched my life. So that empathy and EQ, I think, is super critical.
I absolutely love that, and I completely agree with it as well. It's fantastic. Now, as you know, we do some work kind of like in the DEI space, and we do lots of work around kind of like LGBT and neurodiversity, but specifically around kind of like female leadership. And we're trying to get more and more female leadership in senior positions within hospitality, within leisure, and especially within technology as well, because it's even like, I mean, you can tell me, but it feels like there are even less females at senior level, kind of like within the tech side of things as well. What approaches have you seen companies taking, and what do you think that we can do as an industry to get more diversity at that senior level?
Yeah, so I think recognize, events like the International Women's Day, which recognizes, what I think is a completely unacceptable reality that, here we are in the 21st century and we have too many businesses that do not reflect, in this case, gender, but just generally the diversity of the customer base that they serve. I mean, for me, it's not a philosophical point, it's not a moral point. It's just a downright business point, right? Like you've got to be a business that reflects the customers that you serve because then you understand those customers better. You can walk in the shoes of the customer better and therefore you can serve them better. And therein lies the opportunity for profit, right? So I think it's just such a bizarre situation that we find ourselves in that in the 21st century, businesses still don't reflect the customer base that they serve in the employee population that they have. And so that is the case for me for diversity, right? It's a business case, let alone, sort of the moral, ethical, and what's right. Um, So therefore, doing events like International Women's Day, which acknowledges it, which recognizes that reality and says we need to do something, is really important, because we can forget that that's still not a reality today. So that is important. Second thing is having women's interest networks in businesses, having mentorship programs. That's also, I've benefited from that, right? Because it's very easy, especially when you're starting off in your career and going, oh, am I imagining this? That somehow the playing field doesn't feel level, right? And you don't, no one wakes up somehow thinking there is a conspiracy against them, and there isn't a conspiracy against them, but it doesn't feel like a level playing field. So how do you reconcile that? And then you're alone in your own little thing, thinking, is it just me? So to go to a women's interest network and say, well, there is a shared problem here. So how do we learn from each other? Because there might be things that other women are doing that can help you, overcome what you see to be not a level playing field, right? So that is super, super helpful. And having mentorship, because again, the whole pretender syndrome, it's not just women who fall victim to this, everybody does in varying degrees. But what we know from research is more women tend to fall victim to the imposter syndrome. So how do we help women gain confidence and approach things differently to be able to go for, aspire and go for those roles that historically we don't see women doing? That I think is equally important. The third thing is some of the things that we're seeing about how we word job descriptions, knowing that the way men and women, and I don't like stereotyping because there's always a sliding scale spectrum, but in general, research suggests that women tend to, when they look at a job description, they tend to want to, tick all the boxes. If I don't tick all the boxes, if I don't meet 100%, I'm not even going to apply for the job. Versus how men assess it is, oh, do I tick 40% of it or 50% of it? I will give it a go. The reality is line leaders are only looking for 40 or 50%, right? So how do we then have job descriptions so that you're only putting those 40-50% so women feel able to apply for it? I think is a good thing. And I know lots of companies are starting to do that, being more clear about what the pay expectations are. I think these are all small things that help attract diverse talent, whether that is from a gender perspective or neurodiverse or any other dimension of diversity. It helps attract diverse talent. And then flexible working policies, super important. And again, not just for women, but for diverse talent, because there are people who have caring responsibilities. There are people who come from socially disadvantaged segments of society who need that flexibility in working schedule. And there is a vast amount of untapped talent for us to go after. So being able to offer flexible working policies and being upfront about that, I think is also equally important.
I think all of that is really relevant, Champa. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to run over things with us and spend with us today. Sorry, it's just a short session. I mean, I literally think some of the things you said were so poetic, like that failure is the fuel of a great career. I am taking that away with me from today. It was absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Krishnan. Thank you for the opportunity.